Hi, everyone. My name is Masashi Niwano. I am the Festival and Exhibitions Director at CAM. On behalf of the CAM staff, I welcome you all here. I am so happy to be here. You are all about to get to meet the filmmakers behind The Race Epidemic, one of our most powerful films, a very timely film, and I'm excited to talk to them directly. Before I start that, I have a few notes. First off, I want to thank our co-presenters. These are organizations who are serving our communities and also helping to spread the word about this particular film. So I want to thank the API Council, the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation, and Singapore Connect. Thank you so much. CAM and other CAM programs throughout the year is made possible by a community of supporters around the world. Help us bring compelling and diverse stories to light. Donate or join as a CAM member on CAM's website, camfest.com. For more information, and for a limited time, actually, our new members get to save 15% on our friend and supporter memberships by using the promo code Celebrate Stories. This film is eligible for our feature documentary audience award. So if you like this film, if you think it should win the award, above the player right now, you can see the chance to vote. So please have your voice be heard. When I saw The Race Epidemic a few months ago, of course, I was really impressed with the storytelling, but it so much mirrored what was happening in the real world. And I thought it was a perfect film to play at this festival. It's such an important topic that I'm glad we get to talk about. And so I'm excited to have the filmmakers here to talk about that. So first off, I have our director, Tony Shyu. We have producer, Ron Wong, and we are thrilled to have California's new Attorney General, Rob Bonta, here. Thank you so much for being here. So I guess as a starting point, what I like to do with all Q&A is how are you all doing wherever you're at?
Doing great, thank you.
Yes, I'm good.
Doing
Good,
well.
thank you.
Honored to be with you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. Talking to Ron earlier, we talked about this film took a few years to make, and it actually started as a different film. And I'm curious, before we start talking about the film that everyone got a chance to see, can you talk about the origins of this film and how the story might have shifted through the years?
Right. I think it originated with the idea that we would take a look at the challenges that people of color and Asians face when they hit the campaign trail. And there's all kinds of unseen biases and prejudices that get brought up when you cast that vote, which is very, very personal. And another thing that we wanted to show is not only the struggles that Asians have had historically, but how that plays out into how you have to govern. And that's why we have great people like, at that time, Assemblyman Rob Bonta, but now Attorney General, who was in the original, even 3 years ago, interviewed, and then we interviewed him again. And it really, another thing is highlighting some of the superstars from our community that were stepping up, at least here in California, so that people could see in other parts of the country that you can have robust elected officials, but you just need to have to be ready to deal with questions like, are you more loyal to China, the Philippines, Japan, or are you a loyal American citizen? Because candidates all over the country who are AAPI face that question, even if they're third generation, even if they're decorated military heroes, they still get that questions and questions of their loyalty. So those are the real issues we're trying to address through John Chung's Race for Governor. But of course, it evolved into looking at race and politics generally, and then the pandemic hit. And so we pivoted, and really a lot of that was due to Tony's vision. But all of our other people in the film made great contributions as we pivoted over to what's going on today.
Yeah, and Rob, we are still, as you just, Ron, as you mentioned, we are still in a pandemic. There continues to be racial injustice and hate crimes directed towards communities of color. Rob, can you tell us about what you're seeing and what is happening to combat it?
We are seeing a full-on state of emergency, full-on state of crisis for the API community. Growing hate violence, 3,000 to 4,000 different incidents nationwide since the start of the pandemic, and we know those numbers are underreported, ranging from people being yelled at and spit on, to being shoved down and punched in the face, to being slashed in the face and murdered. And unfortunately, it seems to be getting worse, not better. And the API community is being targeted and attacked for who we are and where we're from. And it's unacceptable. And so what we're seeing also is a growing chorus of voices getting louder and louder, condemning and denouncing this hate, saying that this is not who we are, this is not who we want to be, these are not our values, this is not acceptable. And that's important. It's important for people to stand with our values, to be firm and clear about what we say, and especially our leaders and community and elected leaders to state what is acceptable and what's not. Allyship is also important. We're seeing a lot of that. We're not the only community that's ever been targeted, but we are being targeted now, and it's deeply appreciated and acknowledged to see other communities, Jewish American community, the African American community, Latino community, LGBTQ community, women, all who know a lot, unfortunately, about what it means to be targeted and attacked, standing with the API community in this moment. And we're also seeing elected officials stepping up and taking action. It takes a lot of different forms. There's no panacea, no cure-all to the hate that's infecting our state right now, and how we address and attack the forces of hate. But we're seeing a lot of different efforts. I'm proud of my colleagues in the legislature, my former members of the API caucus, who are proposing many different actions, from hate crime hotlines to changing some definitions around what it means to be a hate crime. And in the Attorney General's office, we're working on our efforts to use the tools that we have better, like working with law enforcement to make sure they know how to investigate and identify hate crimes, building trust between community and law enforcement, so that community members who are hurt, who are attacked or fear attack can reach out and trust law enforcement to help take action. Make sure we have robust victim services so folks can heal, often in languages needed, mental health support. So the list goes on, but we are seeing that the important thing is we're seeing people rise up and say this is not acceptable, and we're turning the pain and the anger into real, durable action.
Thank you. For Tony and Ron, that's a lot right there, and your film does such a wonderful job of kind of capturing what is happening, right? And it's an emotional film. It's at times a heavy film. There's a lot to discuss here, and I'm curious what you can talk about as far as how are you approaching the topic, right? You mentioned the evolution of the story and how things shifted, but for the final product, there are different ways you can tell the story of what's happening within our communities. And can you talk about the way you all decided to tell the story or approach the topic?
Well, I'll just talk about my experience making this film. Mm-hmm. I want to say this is the longest film I ever made in terms of the timing of production, because it took about 3 years of this process. So when we started 3 years ago, there wasn't any film about Asian racism, actually. At that time, everyone thought Asians have made it with the success of Crazy Rich Asian. Everybody loved Asian, and people go to movies to see Asians. So the early challenge for the early stage of this film was to finding a unity of theme that I can emotionally relate to. That was important enough for me to continue to work on this theme. So at the time, the film was important for me for personal reason 3 years ago. It was for my kids, because knowing them, that they will grow up to face some bias, and I wanted them to understand why, and understand these histories about Asians in America that their school doesn't teach, and that they were also part of this country. So that alone was enough for me to find the emotional core for this film. So, but little did I know, 2 years later, COVID would hit, and the film would evolve, and here we are. So I hope this film will educate people and let people know that we belong here. Mm-hmm. And the universal theme for me of this film, is really about love against hate, and that love will unite us and hate will divide us. And united will stand and divided will fall. And that is the fundamental idea of America. And I hope that's what this film says to the audience.
Ron, is there anything else you want to add to that?
I think, I approach this film because I do politics and political science like an encyclopedia, right? I mean, you lay out the arguments, you provide the history, because a lot of people don't know our basic history, the internment of Japanese American, Chinese exclusion, the fact that Cam was in San Francisco. There were riots in 1870, both in San Francisco and Los Angeles, where Chinese in Chinatown were murdered and looted, that this is a repetitive, and it was trying to show the arc of history and how it repeats itself. But Tony, along the way throughout, told me that we needed to hit an emotional chord to make a film and not a senior thesis or an honors thesis. So I think, in that way, it was a great collaboration. But the end goal was to show the facts, to show how history will repeat itself unless we stand up, unless we stand together, and we articulate our values as Americans.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think, especially with a lot of the footage in the film, you can get so focused on the contemporary kind of acts that are happening, but having that historical context to show the different, just the generations of how do we get to where we're at today. I think that was really, really helpful. And I think a lot of times I see a lot of documentaries, like having to bring history to life can be tricky. And I think what you all do really well is talk about the past, but because it's so relevant right now, and you kind of connect those pieces. As you talk about history, what was your process on gathering all that information, all the archival information, photos, all of that?
Well, it's pretty much more of a natural process for me, because I would just follow where my emotional should go. And unfortunately, it's not, if I was talking about Asian hate and I look back in the history, and there are things that are happening that are so similar to what is happening right now, is chilling. When I put them together, it's as if this, what happened 100 years ago could have happened yesterday. So that was very powerful for me to put that comparison next to each other. That sadly, that things haven't changed that much. So that's, for me, I guess that's the powerful part, putting those two together, the past and present.
And Rob, as we talked about, and in your last question, you mentioned, there's a lot happening and there's a lot of darkness that's happening. We do have our audiences who just watch the film, and, for them to walk away from the screenings, I'm curious if you have any optimistic hopes or anything you'd want to share with our audiences as they kind of move forward.
For Rob or for Ron? For Rob?
Oh, Rob, sorry, yes.
No, sorry. No, thank you. It's important to see and feel, as so many of us have, and still to this day, the pain and the fear and the anxiety. It's real, it's personal, it affects each of us personally, our loved ones, our families. For me, so tragically, our elders, our beloved elders, who are so fearful to just engage in their activities of daily living, their walks, their trips to go shopping. Walking on the street is a place now full of fear, and our children as well. The bullying of our children, racist bullying of our children, has been so sad and so painful to see. And we need to sort of um, um, sit in it and let that pain and that fear, like, be human about it. It's real, and see it in each other. Have that compassion and empathy and humanity, and fight to change it, because it's not something that we should accept. It's not something that we should allow to continue, and own our power as change makers. All of us are. Everyone can do something to address hate and improve our collective circumstances and our common future. And it gives me hope that is happening more and more. Time and time again, in the darkest hour, you see the best in people. You see people who rise up with strength and power and resilience, who see in themselves things they may have never seen before, their ability to overcome and to change. And it's often, unfortunately, born of pain and fear. But if we turn that into positive outcomes, as I see we are doing now, we'll see that anxiety, that fear, that worry start to fall away more and more. And it's because of people who put a mirror up to the reality of what's happening, like Tony and Ron, and they say it's hard to know, to see the big picture and step back when you're in it. But the connections and the parallels in the film are so powerful. This is the yellow peril all over again. We're the consummate other. We're always visiting. We're always foreign. We never belong. We're always carrying disease and viruses, and it is literally happening right now. But I have deep hope and optimism that we're going to continue to emerge. We're on the right track. We have powerful leaders in our own community who I'm deeply proud of and thankful for, who are helping us overcome. And step by step, we'll continue to build back and build back stronger.
If I could just add one thing, because I think it's worth noting. There's a great quote in the movie that at that time Assemblyman Bonta said about how and this was during the height of Trump attacking the Latino community, and the Attorney General said, it's not just the Latino issue, it's an Asian issue. It's an issue that affects all of us, immigrants, people of color, everybody. But to know and remember the context that this document was made in, and when we spoke to folks, this was a very different world, but yet those quotes are relevant to exactly what's happening today. Because now a Latino hopefully looks and this is not just an Asian issue, this is an issue that affects all of us, because it's just a matter of time before one group gets attacked, then it's the next, then it's the next, and we got to really all stand together. And I think that's what Tony and Rob and I have been really what our hope for the movie is.
Tony, anything else you would want to add to that?
Well, I just want to talk a little bit about, you were talking about the history and the context of the film, how, in terms of research. I just want to say, I think it is important that we recognize the current anti-Asian hate didn't just come out of nowhere. These hatred or ideas, as we're growing up, people subconsciously, learn that. When I grew up in this country, I don't remember having a history class teaching us any of the discrimination against age, teaching us history about Asian American being, being attacked or anything. So there was a sense that there's no Asian history in America. For me, I learned all my Asian histories from the movies, actually. So from Deer Hunter, when I would go to, when I watched Deer Hunter when I was very little, and then I would go to school the next day, I still remember kids would come up to me and pretend to put a gun on my head and say, Mao, I become the villain. And I also remember when I was walking in the mall with my friends, people would randomly come up to us and say, are you Long Dak Dong? These kind of things subconsciously makes you feel that you're less than. And I feel Asian American representation is also important. So I think film is very important in presenting an image of us.
Thank you, Tony, so much. That's, yeah. I think, what I'm hearing there is the power of media, of storytelling. I think that's what it's a great reason why your film is so important, because it has the opportunity to reach people, to continue this dialogue. We are sadly running out of time, but I want to make sure this is just the beginning of your film journey. I'm sure it's going to get out to more people in the future. How can people follow along, whether through social media or other ways?
Well, we have, me and Ron, actually, we have a production company that we're committed to do more Asian American representation work, including films, feature films. I have a screenplay that I wrote that has the Asian American lead. And also, I am also producing a all Asian cast reality show. And sadly, that also has met prejudice. And it's, it's a long story, but just because it was all Asian, people have all this preconception of it's going to be like a crazy rich Asian, all these. But so the city we're in killed the film by giving us a hard time. And in fact, Bravo was interested in taking on the project, but they back off because the city was giving us such a hard time. So these kind of things made me realize that we still got a lot of fight to go to get Asians out there and represent our real image, the real us, not these crazy rich Asian or Karate Kid or whatever. But we are real people, and we want to present us as real people with real stories, with real drama, and real important things to say, and that's relevant to this culture.
Yeah.
Just, I got to add one thing about the current film and how we cast, right? How we got these people on board. Anyone across this country watches this film, they will say the AAPI community is ready to lead. They will say people of color are ready to lead, because this is a representation of not only the best and the brightest in the AAPI community, but the best leaders that we can put on the field, and we're ready to lead in America.
Thank you so much. We are sadly out of time, but thank you so much, Tony, Ron, and Rob. Thank you so much to the audiences. We look forward to seeing you at another festival event, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.